Hi, welcome to painting atmospheric castles with moats and just enjoy. There's a lot to think about, but it's really fun. So enjoy. Okay, so we've got these lovely, gorgeous castles with moats, and I just think they're a little bit, just create real sense of calm, particularly where we've got still, this lovely still water. So I thought that would be quite nice. I think sometimes, when we do get, even it's the same when we get snowy weather, isn't it? Just everything comes to a kind of a more of a peaceful stop. So I thought, well, that's a nice winter, although it's not really like middle of winter inspiration. It's very still, so it's really nice, I think, in January to do some still paintings. So I'm going to do this, demonstrate this one. The main reason I've chosen this one is I just really like this how this foliage falls over the top and just creates a little bit of interest around it. But initially, and you may, see what you fancy. But initially, I thought I just was really drawn to the colours in this one. So there's no reason you can't combine the two different, put this colour on there or whatever. But I'm going to work on that one. And then we have this gorgeous one where we've just got this really beautiful stonework, and we've got this circular kind of stonework, so that's gorgeous. And then, oh, there's this one here that's got much more green in the foreground. So if you're craving a bit of green, then by all means, go in with the green. So there's a few things tonight I would say are kind of a little bit of a focus. Um, so what we'll be thinking about particularly is how we get such an enormous building, how we make it feel really quite big with the use of using our shadows, some warmer colours, and then some other walls that are hitting the highlight. So how we get the shape in this building, because it's so vast. And obviously we want to still keep it at a distance because it's a painting that's been, it's a composition that's in a distance. One of the other ones is very close up, so that's totally different. But when we're keeping something farther away, we've got to think about how we're going to use the different tones in here. So that's one, that's looking at the base colours. Something else to think about along the way is, how we kind of can get a nice feel, like artistic feel to some brickwork and the tones we can drop in. And then, of course, there's the moat itself and how we get that watery effect in there when it's so still. And then this little area, how we get some, if you wanted to put mist on it, how we can use mist. Now, you might not want to, and that's absolutely fine. So I've got, some little tips for that as well. But as I say, go at your own pace because there's quite a lot going on in this. Um, I'm just going to start just with sketching out, just with an ordinary pencil. I'm going to press really deeply with mine so that you can see it on the screen though. Whereas you probably better working nice and lightly. Now, if you're doing this one where you have a really big block here of building, then by all means draw that out first. Or even this one, or this one might be a bit more complicated to do that. You might not do it with this one. With this one and this one, with all the tiny turrets on it, it would be really hard work if we draw all that in first to try and get the sky coming through it. So my suggestion with this is when we're thinking about each piece, each composition, how we're going to approach it. So we're ignoring all of this front foliage because what we want to do is build up our painting from the very back to the front, and we're like looking at the layers. So I'm not even going to do the water until I've done the castle, and then that'll make more sense when I'm trying to get this into the water. So I'm going to leave the bottom half. It looks about just that it's about just over halfway. If you're wanting to help a little bit with proportion, then you can always fold your paper in half that way and just do a little line down it. This pretty much tells us, doesn't it, where halfway is there. So I might just transfer that on here because then it will help me decide where I'm going to put this little bit here. So if you want to, you can, but I'm only going to do it to halfway like that. I'm not going all the way down the middle. And then I'm going to use the water's edge here as a mark. Now, mine is quite sketchy, which is fine. I'm not even going to put how far down this bit of castle comes in yet. I'm just going to do a nice kind of more or less straight line. It's just under halfway up. And then from there, I can then take each section of the castle once we get going. But what I'm going to do, if there's any foliage in the back that you don't need to paint the sky behind, then we can put that in. So maybe we'd be maybe as well to just have a little look about whereabouts this first section here where the castle is comes out to. And I'd say in this quarter, it's just over halfway. So I'm just going to pop a little line in here just so I know where that's going to come to. Now I also know that that here is about halfway here. We don't really need to come all the way down there, do we, with our sky either, because it kind of goes over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this sky in first behind it. Same here. I'm just going to bring it, I'm going to bring the sky kind of down here a bit. There's a bit of a bush or there's a bit of something behind it. It looks like maybe it is part of the building there. So I'm only going to kind of just do the top area here, and then we're going to paint the castle over the top. Okay, so this is a definite layering up process. What I will say with this is it can feel a little bit frustrating. So when we get going with the castle, I'm going to suggest we work in a section at a time and actually do a little bit of the castle and build the castle up, because sometimes it's very difficult to see where we're going with it, because there's so many different tones and colours in there. So we'll build a little bit of the castle up just to give us a little bit more confidence that things are going to change by the end, because sometimes with acrylic it can be very take a long time if we to start blocking in the whole thing. So we'll start to block it in this side, and then we'll start to build it up and build up the brickwork, and then we'll do the same there. So first of all, we want to get some nice sky in. So you can choose a colour similar, or you can choose your own. Thank goodness. So, if you're fancying some really lovely kind of a bit more uplifting blues or whatever, then by all means go in with that. I've just got a couple on my palette today. So I've got some ultramarine blue, which is more of a kind of a pastel-y blue when we mix it with white. And then I've got some cerulean blue. I'm actually going to do a combination of the both. But if you've got phthalo blue as well, then that will be fine. Or even a bit of cobalt, you could try those. It's a good time to experiment with the blues that you've actually got there. So I'm just going to get a little bit of my cerulean. I'm certainly going to test these colours as well. Just scrape that off. I'm going to take another little bit of this blue. Now last week we did a bit of some of us did a bit of a background, didn't we? And built those colours up. So I'm going to keep a little bit of this blue, this dark one, and I'm going to take a little bit as well and make it a bit more pastel-y. And I may put a little bit of a slightly darker tone in the back, but I'm going to mix up all of the colours as I go. So I'm going to go in with this one. Just some white in there until I'm kind of happy with the colour. I won't know that, so I'll just have a little test. Sometimes you can just tell, but so before I even add the water, I'm just gonna, I quite like that. This is my darker one, so I'm going to try that next to it, see if it blends. Quite like that. And then also what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a much lighter one as well, so I can just have a play about with this sky a little bit behind it, because sometimes you get these little areas of light, don't you? Certainly it's lighter over this side because you can see it hitting this side of the castle. So whichever castle you're doing, have a little look at where you think that light is, where it's a bit lighter in the sky and where it's a little bit darker. If anything, we tend to get a bit of darkness kind of around the corners of a photograph or of a shot, or when we're actually painting as well. It's just sometimes the way it goes. But I'm going to take a little bit more of this mix here, and I'm going to add even more whites, which I really like. So I've got a combination, and then I can play around and add those colours as we go. And again, I'm just going to make sure that this one is light enough compared to the others. Give it a little bit of test. I'm going to add a bit more, even a bit more white there. You can do this with a small brush if you've not got your palette knife. A palette knife's absolutely fine. And then once you're happy with your colours, then just drop a little bit of water in there. So I'm going to mix it with a bit of, just drop some water in. And like last week, again, when we're getting back into it, just thinking about how much water you want to add. So you don't need to add loads of water, but you do need it to feel like it's going on nice and smoothly. So we don't. So last week we had plenty of water on our brush. Sorry, plenty of paint on our brush as well as water. So I'm going to go in with this much darker colour to start with. And because I've got all these colours there now, we can just blend them in a little bit. And I've gone in with a flat brush here. So I'm just going to kind of go in. Now that's, you know, that is quite dark. So just play about with it. But the reason being, I can then go in with some other colours around it. So I'm going to go in with the other one and we can just kind of layer them together. It's really nice to just be able to try. So I might just try to drop more water on there because it's just that bit stiff. And whilst it's all damp, we can just mix in, you know, those darker ones with the lighter ones. Just kind of go backwards and forwards. And then I'm going to go in with this even lighter one because I'm getting towards the horizon and I'm adding a bit more. But of course, you know, there's no point in me going right to the bottom because the castle is there anyway. So I'm just going to, whereabouts I think it's going to be lighter in here. And just, you can just almost use the edge of your brush to help, you know, to help kind of blend in the next layer. You can always pop a bit of the other colour back in as well. Oops, I've gone a bit light. So if you ever do that and you just go a bit where you don't want to, just dab it off with a bit of tissue or something. Now, of course, you don't have to have a perfectly seamless blend. You can actually, if you want in it, if you like a nice light colour, so I'm going to go in a bit lighter here. You can go in with a lot of texture and kind of get the texture of your brush and everything in there and get some lines and things in. This is just showing you how you can get a nice smooth yeah, a nice smooth finish. I'm just going to go in with my water. Just kind of take off that colour now, just dab it out a bit, but then I'm just going to get that blended, a bit more blended in. And then when that's dry, the thing is we do these skies and we kind of get really very into the detail on these skies, and then before we know it, we're covering half of it over. So we're just going to go in and just enjoying that process because it does feel really nice when we're painting it on, doesn't it? Really lovely. And then just play about with the colours from there. I'm not going to do too much to this because I might be in danger of just kind of overworking it a little bit, but I just wanted it to come a bit brighter. So I think I'm going to go in and put a bit more light in there. And this is the thing, sometimes we have a plan for something, but then as we go, we think, oh, actually, that needs to be lighter or that needs to be a bit darker or whatever. Just want this sense of that we're getting the light from this area here. Quite bright at the top, actually, just a little bit. And I'm just going to, then I can just dab it in. But you can even just do a little bit of a tap with your finger if you feel like it. But yeah, we're just having a play, but it's really lovely when you get into the flow of this. Skies are really nice to do, aren't they? They're just lovely. So I'm going to leave mine there. I'm happy with the colour that's there. I'm just going to move this to the side. So when I've got that, now this is where you can decide, do you want to go over in pencil? Do you want to, you know, if you feel more comfortable putting a few lines down to start popping the castle in, you can, or you can use your brush. Now I'm going to go in with my brush only because I always show the drawing side of it. And actually I'm going to use a tiny bit of this blue that I've used. um, just a little bit of the other colour, maybe a little bit, just ultramarine. The only reason I'm doing that is just so that it stands out a little bit, just to draw some of these lines. So, because with the acrylic, we can basically go over them anyway. But as I said, I'm going in with a very small, a much thinner round brush. So it needs to be able, you need to be able to kind of almost, I'd say it's a rustic drawing, sketch. It's more of a sketch. It's not a really tidy drawing that I'm doing on here, but it's just to show you a different way to drawing all of this with a pencil as well. So you by all means stick to your pencil if you want to. So what I am tending to do here is I'm taking this in two sections, and I'm going to tackle this bit of the castle and then this bit on its own here, just because there's so many walls and things, it can get a little bit overwhelming. So I'm just going to pop in, and I'm going to start just in this middle section here, and I'm just going to do a little line up to whereabouts I think it's going to go. Might be a bit lower than that actually. And that's it. I'm just going to put these little lines in for the moment. We're not going to put the tops in yet. And then I'm also going to put whereabouts I think the end one comes to. So that is, to me, it's a little bit over halfway within this section here, in this quarter. It's coming over, just a bit over halfway. So, and again, I'm looking at how tall I think it is. So this one's slightly taller than that one. And again, it's just to kind of help us just lay a few lines down without worrying too much about it. So it will be a bit quite sketchy, this will. And so then we've got, you know, the outer line, the inner line, and then we've got this, you know, this midsection. So I'm just going to work out, I think this comes down a bit lower than I've got it. So I think it's going to be there. So I'm looking at how I'm going to break this up into some areas, and I think that probably it is about here. And this is all we can do, is just have a go, don't worry, because we can always shift the lines, but in a way it's easier to shift the lines than it is if you start drawing a whole section, another section, then you think, oh no, it doesn't fit. So if we work out an area to try and fit it within, then we can move things along a little, and we won't have gone into the trouble of drawing all those turrets and things first. So all of these lines are coming straight down. And then this one is at the thickest area, isn't it? This is the biggest building. So I'm going to commit to that middle section being like that. And that's the tallest over here as well. So it's quite tall. I'm just going to bring those lines up to where I think that they should go on the outside. And then I'm looking at this taller bit here. I think if you can commit one section and you're fairly confident with that one section of where, you know, how wide it is, then that makes it a little bit easier. Bring a bit of the ultramarine just so you can see it on the screen. And then we'll complete whereabouts that comes to in a moment, but pretty much when we're trying to work out what a curve is like, so we call it an ellipse, like the curve of something. So if I just put my ruler here across the center of this section of the castle here, what we're looking for is that curve above it, and how deep that ellipse is. You know, is it a really wide? No, it's not really wide, you know, not a really deep one. It's a fairly steady one. So we can even do that when we come to do our own. We can let's do the bottom of it first. So I'm going to put that ruler there just to help me to actually copy the ellipse that I saw, which kind of comes up just a little bit in the middle. And this is like, again, it's an extra little skill that we're just dipping into where that is there. And then that means that when I go into doing the turrets on the top, I can then follow that same pattern with the little edge bits here, look. So we're just following that round where all of these sections go. Even when they're taller or shorter, we're following the top of that ellipse almost like it's going all the way around like that there. We can just do that. Okay, so a really simple way of tackling those bits. We don't really need to overcomplicate that at all with the curve. And then the only bit we've got now is we've got quite three little sections here. I'm going to end up moving mine over slightly, I think. But we've got this little bit down here, and what we're doing is we're comparing how thin that is. That could be quite difficult, can't it? Because like this, we know that this one is the widest bit of the building here. And then this bit is probably only, maybe even only 2/3 of that. So you can see how it all kind of squashes in. So the only other like little angles, and this is whichever bit of the castle doing or whichever castle you're doing, if you've got any angles like this, we don't really need to work out anything really fancy, any fancy equipment. You're just getting a lean on. So you could even do it with a pencil and think, oh yeah, it's quite a lean on that there. That comes up to about here. I'm just doing the little lean. And then again, I'm just going to pop this down. It's quite a thin little bit of wall there. Well, it's not really, is it? But it is on this, well, you know, how we're setting it out on here. And then we've just got this extra section to pop in here. So I can use the side then of the castle up here to think, okay, there's a little bit of the roof here, and then this comes down the middle of the two there. There we go. And then we can work out, you know, from here again, we've got this little bit of the turret here. You know, does it go straight across? Not quite. It kind of leans down a little bit, doesn't it? So again, we can just check it and just, you know, work out how that's going to go. And then we can pop on all of these little bits of these turrets and things that are up here. You know, we can join that bit up the top. So whichever castle we're doing, this can apply to any of those at all. So now what we have is we just have another line, little very thin bit of the edge of this building. Of course, it's not thin, but from our perspective, it's much thinner. So again, I'm looking at what's that angle like? Oh, it's really quite steep, isn't it? You know, the angle's quite steep, but the actual wall is quite thin. So we're just bringing that down. Because it's such a thin line on this bit of paper, I'm holding my brush quite far down just so I've got a bit more control over it. So that's one way of doing that. So you can see this one now. This is what I was saying about, you know, it's easier to move a line than to do the whole thing again. So exactly that. I am just going to move out this section of this building, just that bit further. And we can paint over that anyway when we put our colour on. Yeah, so I've got all these downward areas, and then we've got this bit here. So, you know, so we've kind of got in a quite a bit of section already. Now you can see I've only taken mine up to the line to the minute. You know, I left it and got all of this lined up, but if you want to kind of go in and look at, some of them will be square, some of them are coming down a bit sticking out, that bit's going back in. This bit's a bit rounded and coming out. And again, this ellipse should be about as steep as this one. So again there, if we go across there, there's only a very small angle, isn't there, below that line. I might have even got mine a bit too deep, but again, it's okay. We'll just practice them. And then this other one is set back a little bit. So we can start to see all of the different shapes of the castle, just lots of little linear bits, but really interesting. We don't get to see these kinds of things, do we, in detail very often. So again, so I'm just going to look at where these little turrets are, the angles. Just do 3 straight little lines if you're not sure how to fit those in, and then there's just a gap between it. So that's why trying to fit the sky behind it would be really hard work, because we've only got little gaps of things coming through. Okay, and then we've got the other section to do. So or the other section of the castle that you're doing. So yeah. So if you've gone a bit high up the wall like that, for example, and then it's kind of going onto the sky and you think, oh no, happened, then just give it a little bit of a rub round. It should still be okay. Just with a bit of a damp brush, not so that it's taking the top off the paper, but enough so that it'll come out. And if it doesn't come off a little bit, then you can just add a little bit of your lighter paint over the top and it will cover quite easily. Here we go. So then we've got this next section, isn't it? We've got to decide how are we going to fit all of that in. So that's the thing next, is to work out that. So let's see. So yeah, so we've got this part where we've got the we've got the gate where the moat's coming through. Well, it's not, is it? That's the entrance to the castle. So it looks almost like it's on the edge of the moat, isn't it? Where the grass is. So it's working out how, that's obviously the biggest bit. So within this quarter over here, that takes up halfway, doesn't it, actually? So we can kind of pop a little line in. Tell you what I am going to do though. I'm going to put this grass in first, because the grass comes out there, right the way across. So where that bit of water goes, the grass is doing that. But actually, the wall is on an angle. So if I make that bit of the grass coming through all the way to there, just going to pop a little line in where the grass will go, and then just remind myself, because I don't know where I'm going to have the edge of where it's going to come to here there. So I'll put that bit of wall that's got a bit of an angle on it into the water in a minute. But what I can do is take this section and make sure that this wall comes out about half of the way. So I'm going to do that now. That's needs to be a bit further over. There we go. Now, so get some more of this blue. The reason I haven't gone straight in with a very dark shadowy colour is that it can make it feel a bit, a bit hard. Because some of these lines aren't, are quite in the light as well. So again, it's just working out how far up to go. And again, it's just a work in progress. Don't worry about it. It's one of those things, it's a new topic. I doubt we've all been staring at castles a lot just recently. I mean, I might be wrong, but it's one of those things that unless you're looking at castles every single week, there's lots of new lines and things to think about. So just have a go at trying that. So I think I've got up to where the outside, where this wall is, but the thicker bit, the bit in the shadow here, it comes on the outside. So I've only gone up to there. So what I need to think about now is how it joins up and how far it comes up to there. So this is a bit that's got a little bit more going on with it. So let's have a little look. So it's not quite as high as this one when you follow it across. And if you're not sure, just kind of hold something across. Yeah, this other side is taller. We can always move things up a little bit. So then it's how we break up this bit here. So again, you can take this bit in two halves. So you've got that part and that part, if that makes it easier. So actually this section here where the arch goes is almost maybe just slightly less than this. I'm just going to move this down. It's almost halfway, but not quite. So again, I'm just going down and up with this line, or you go all the way down. Then when I've got up to, it's just a bit taller, isn't it, than there? So the top of the arch. So again, it's working out where the top of this arch comes, how high up you want to go. So I'm going to go to about there with it. And again, we might shift things as we go, but that's fine for now. And then we're looking at this section in the middle actually is quite narrow, and I've done that a bit thicker. So I'm going to make that a little bit thinner. But again, this is why adjust your lines all the time works really well. Don't need to have anything, nothing is set in stone when we're drawing. And then we've got the underside of this fantastic bridge here, or where you would imagine the bridge to go. There we go. Can always make that low as well if it's too high. And then we've got something then we can use that to work out where all the other little bits go. So, I'm sketched in. You can just do a few of the little bits on there. I'm not going to do any windows or anything like that because obviously we need to put things down, the colours down and things like that. So now we've got this bit here. We can then see that this edge here comes over the top a little bit of the water. It feels like it's hanging over. I'm sure it's not in, it is in the water though there, hanging over the edge. And then there's another curved bit there. So we're just observing really. So I can take that into two now and put another line down here. And it doesn't really matter if it's not identical. We're just exploring all these different things. Obviously got all of these little like wibbledy-wobbledy turrets here. And a lot of this we can put in, these shadows and things we'll put in once we get some of the colours and things on there. So we're just at the moment, we know that this is kind of like the middle of the wall. So I'm actually going to ignore these for now. The only thing I might put in is that straight line there, look. Just so that it just reminds me that's where I need to put those kind of shadowy ones up there. And then I am going to pop in some of these on the top. And again, it's just doing your best with what you can see. You know, how we break it all up, how we draw those in. And if you don't get it accurately, that's all right, because we can add a little bit in as well as you're going again once you start getting the paint on there. So as I said, nothing is lost at all. So again, over the top of here, we've got a little bit less to think about because there's only two sections here over the top of this section. And then we can just keep going round. Really lovely because it doesn't half pull your concentration in this. Really good. Really makes us look. And then we've just got this end section there. So again, I'm just going to kind of, I feel like we've got one wall there, one across the front that's flat and one going back. It's almost got three little sections. So I'm just going to try and do that, break that up into wall going in, a shadowy wall behind, which I'm going to add on this side because it wasn't quite wide enough when I did it before. And then this middle section here. And then I'm going to try and just have a look, you know, I'm going to put a little line in there just to suggest where these areas, these darker areas of shadow and where the stone's jutting out is going to go. We can pop those on afterwards. So that doesn't need to be done now because we'll end up painting over it. Okay. And then again, looking at these bits, these turrets that are sitting out, standing out here. topping up your paint. So, and you can use this a bit more like watercolor this when we're putting this in, so it's nice and thin on your brush, so it doesn't feel really hard to paint with when you're doing these lines and things. And then I'm looking at this next section here. So again, see where the grass is there. And then I'll be able to, once I've got this building in, start to put in where that wall is underneath there. But like I say, these lines can all be moved. You don't have to stick with it. This tall, other tall one that comes up. It's really interesting how it was built. It's amazing. I'll just pop this in and then I'll come and chat to see how everybody's getting on and give them a little break there. Really takes a lot of concentration, this one. A little line. Again, I can see another kind of area here in the stone. And then a lot of this is obscured by the trees, and that's fine. Because we can only see patches of colour, and that's literally what we'll put on behind, but then the tree will come over and cover it. So we don't have to reinvent something that we can't see. We only just pop in exactly what we think we can see, and that's okay. And then there's something else coming out, another bit of stonework or something there, something else here. We can't really see up the top there at all, so that's okay. Just do what you can see. We have to, our eye makes it up anyway. I'm just trying to make sure that all of these come down in a straight line. And they're all parallel. Mine's leaning a little bit there, but again, I'll make sure once we get the colour in that it's not too leaning. And then the only other thing I'm going to pop in is where this comes up and through up the side of this bridge there. So I've got some grass at the top. It gets thinner as it goes, and then we've got just where the wall is, just here in the water. And then that will obviously help a little bit as well with working out where everything goes. I think there's a little bit of a curve under there as well, which is interesting. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, through there. I didn't notice that this morning at all. Yeah. Okay, so that's just to start. We've got to pop all the block of colour. We'll come back to that in a moment. Take a pause here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is try and put some tones in there, some mid-tones is what I would say that they are. Before we go in then with a few shadows. Now, normally what I would say is, oh, you know, if you're going to do a section, often the way it works when we, you know, putting on the acrylics is we can shadows, mid-tones, then we put brights and highlights on. And that's true. So each section, that's how we'll build it up. However, when we're looking at the castle, what we really need to think about and work out is which are the lit sides. So, because what we need to do is get this big castle and just show the beauty of how big it is, or the depth or the shape or whatever. So we need to kind of quite pay attention to the sides that are lighter. So on this one, you see that there's a lot of light coming from this side. A couple of areas, but then there's a lot in the shadow as well. And some sides are obviously more obviously very shady. We've also got to think about, you know, the depth, like particularly this section that's really set back where you get this much darker area as well. And then in with that, some areas that might be some of the areas of the castle that might have a little bit more warmth to them as well. So we've got this section particularly has got kind of more lovely, or warm pinks, oranges, whatever you think is in there. So as well as having the shadows, which will be much more cool based, and they'll for them to go back, the shadow to show how deep something is, we'll need to think dark and cool with our tones. So we're just really, when we're starting out, we're just paying attention to the main colour we can see on some of these particularly obvious ones. And then the other ones, and that's just for the first blocking out of the first colour. Then we can work into it a little bit more. So we're almost thinking light, mid, shadow, warm, etc. as we're going through, just popping these castle bits in. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, say, this section up to here, do that, but then start to build in some of these other nice bits of brickwork, just so that you can see a bit finished. And that's really based on how other people have felt about it whilst they've been doing it, and just thought, oh no, I can't see anything. It feels terrible. It's just, oh, that's just really childlike. So we're going to try, I'm going to demonstrate doing that with these sections, looking at the shady ones, a warmer one, and highlighted side, popping those in, but then working into each area. So we've almost got a little bit of finished castle. So we go, ah, yes, this works. So it's just a little trick to keep us going. Sometimes it's this whole, how do we kind of motivate ourselves? And hopefully as well, if you're having a go at this on your own, or something similar that's got a lot to it, that you might just think, oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to break it up a little bit and finish a bit, because it just helps you when you're doing something as well on your own, especially when there's not other people there to help kind of like bring us, just kind of like give us some support and say, yeah, it's fine or whatever. And yeah, that's normal, that we can do these little kind of break up these little techniques when we're on our own, just to keep ourselves going, really. So I'm going to mix up on my palette here some coolish colours for here, some very lighter ones here, and then a few warmer ones for here, and then another dark area. Now some of these dark areas or light areas might have a couple of tones in them for that mid-tone. So I'm just going to go with it, really. So let's have a look. So for the very lightest highlighted ones, where the sun is kind of shine, where we've got this light shining on it, I'm going to take a bit of white. Now a lot of these are mixing white in, to be fair. But that's and it's not white, it's not really bright. So it's thinking what colour. And a lot of this is just having a little bit of a play and seeing what you come up with. But you could go in with a bit of a peachy colour. I'm going in for a very light one if I am. So I'm going to put white, a bit of cadmium yellow, that's a slightly warmer yellow. But it doesn't matter if you haven't got cadmium yellow, you've got lemon yellow, just go with that. We're just exploring what happens when we like trying a few different tones. I'm going to go in with a bit of cadmium red, which is a warmish red. So I'm going to end up with a slightly pinky tone here because I've added quite a bit. So I'm just might actually go back and add a bit more yellow because it's going a bit too pink for what I want. I want it a bit lighter. Warm it up with a little bit more yellow in there. And then see if I've got anywhere near a shade that I'm after. Now, if you're doing the other castle where you've got a lot of warmth through it, you could try something like this, which is a burnt sienna colour. So it's the warm brown. It's got much more red in it, that's why it's warm. Try a little bit of white mixed in with that. Try a bit more to warm things up a bit more. Or a bit of orange. So we've got all sorts of different little bits of different tones there. So that's my slightly warmer one here. So I'm going to add even more in that one. I'm still keeping it a bit pinky. So again, I'm just going back and adding little bits until I'm happy with the shade. So I've added a lot more red there, and you can see how strong that colour is. It's a bit too much for me. So I'm going back to my brown, dropping a bit more in, and I've got minute bits, how tiny, when I'm testing, really small amounts, because these pigments, the browns and reds, are really quite strong. So we only need small amounts, same with brown, which I'll come back to. And I'm going to go in, drop in a bit more, just a bit more white into there, because I have a feeling I'm going to use this colour quite a bit for the brickwork, even if I don't use it for the overall one. So I've got like quite a brighter one for a highlighted wall. This one that's a little bit more, I suppose, salmony. That's the colour I'm kind of seeing, but also you may see something that you feel is a bit more in this side, a bit more yellow base. So if I go in with a bit of white and a bit of yellow, and then I put a tiny drop of blue or even purple, I'm even seeing purple in that, but I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to drop a tiny bit of ultramarine blue in there. Be careful if I don't end up with green. A bit more yellow in. Blue is just really the tiniest amount in there. I'm going to go back and pop a bit more warmth in that. So we can warm things up and cool them down the same way we do with, you know, other tones as well. Still looking a bit too greeny, that one. And I'll tell you what I do need, just a tiny bit of brown. So I'm going to pop on there. Where is it? Let's see. This is burnt umber. This is our cooler brown. This is the one that I'll use in the for the shadows quite a bit as well. So with this, you need the tiniest, tiniest drop when you're trying to just make something a bit more of stoneworky, like stone, because it's such a so intense. But what it does, it kind of drops the stone colour, drops it in a bit more stony. It takes out the warmth. So you could even use those two together if you wanted to for this kind of middle section. And then I want something that's a bit more shadowy. Now I'm not feeling like it's really brown. I feel it's a bit purpley, so I'm going to try that. A bit of purple. I haven't tested these colours, have I? So I really should do that first. So let's make sure my brush is clean of the others. This is a castle colour, so I've got kind of like a stonework, but then a warmer stonework side by side. Then one of the highlighted sides. I might even need to make that lighter, I'll see. When I get the shadowy one next to it, we'll try it. And then I'm just mixing this with purple. Now this is maybe slightly warmer purple, but you could try a cooler purple. So this is warmer because it's got a little bit reddy. Sometimes the violet ones are cooler, they've got more blue, but again, just try it. I'm also going to pop a little bit of white with it because these shadows, they're shadowy, but they're not the darkest are they? They're not like these really dark ones here. So I'm going to go in with a bit of white, a bit of purple, and the tiniest bit of brown, burnt umber again. And I think I'm getting near to a colour there that I'd quite like for these shadows. But again, it's just trial and error. You might be seeing different colours. The beauty is, and this morning, everybody's was different colour. So that's the good thing. You know, we're all exploring with the eye that we can see things with. So that's the beauty of it. So don't be put off if you're seeing another colour. Just go for it. Because our artist impressions, remember, we're not trying to recreate this photograph today. We're trying to get our artist impression. Now I might just drop a tiny bit of ultramarine blue in there as well, just to make it even cooler. Very small amounts, because again, the very strong colour is blue. Right, I'm getting somewhere near where I feel like that's a bit more what I want. So I'll try that one. Just make sure I'm washing my brush between so I can properly test the colour. Okay, there, I'm happy with that now. And that's before I've even put like a much darker one in, which we'll do after. So I feel like I've got a few different tones there, and that's the key to it really. The key to it is to having different tones that will really complement each other, and also some will feel more shadowy than others. And that's what we're aiming for. So I'm going to go back in with a round brush now. I'm just changing my water over. I shouldn't forget that if you're going with warmer tones, you'll need a nice fresh water because otherwise it's blue. But of course, if you want to go all blue, then by all means do, that's great. So I'm going to go in now with each section. I'm going to start, get this shadowy area in here. So this is how hopefully, she says, no it will, it's okay, where we're starting to, you know, with these different tones that we're putting in. Actually, I'm just going to add a touch more blue actually, just to make it slightly darker. Where we can go in and start to, and this is where it's blocky. It will look a bit more like a block, and that's fine. So you can, if you've got, mine's very tiny, but you can actually just use a straight brush to do that. So if you've got space in on your paper to go down and create with a nice little flat brush, you can like just run that edge down it like that. I'll just, don't know, just down like that, and that will bring that straight edge where you want it to. Or you can just go in with a round brush. Have a little play with the brushes and see which you prefer to do that. So I'm going in with the dark one here. I'm also going to go in with the dark down this side. This is why I've got them all the colours mixed up as well, because we can, if we want to, we can blend them a bit. So that when that's going round that side here, it's a bit more shady. That side's definitely shady in here. Some of these turrets feel a bit more shady, so I'm going to pop those in. And some of these areas will darken even more. I'm going to be bringing some ultramarine, but I'll you know, a much darker colour. And then this section here feels really much darker. So I'm going to bring another colour in there as well, because I'm going to bring in this this section in here, like this burnt sienna and a bit of this purpley. So that's how I'm feeling it needs to be. And again, we can only go on, sometimes our gut feeling and things is quite good. Right, okay. So I'm just going to do this up to here, just so we can see. Let's get the other darker ones in there. So I'm going to go in with these two colours I've just mixed up, which now that's gone over the top, but that's fine. We can just, I can rectify that the other side. This will have some much darker areas that I'm going to pop in a mo as well. I'm working into that if I feel it's a bit darker. So this is where it starts to get a bit blocky, and that's fine, as long as you realise it's going to get blocky because we're blocking, that's what we're doing, we're blocking in these colours. And what we'll do is we'll add some shadows, and then we'll add some lighter ones as we go through, but we need to just get the foundations there in. But some are going to feel darker than others. I'm going to continue around this other side. I'm going to go back into this section here, which it's quite light on that side, but it's got all sorts going on here with some of these other shades. So I'm going to bring some of those round. Now you can almost follow that, you know, that the round bit here and the round bit here. You can kind of create the curves that way, following the top. And then it kind of straightens out in the middle. These are the cooler ones. Some of the yellow, more shady ones. But then it gets much lighter, and we've got some kind of other colours in there as well. So we're just creating a bit of shape just by following those contour lines there that we've done. Okay, and then it's quite light on this side, and it's quite warm in the middle. So I'm going to go in with this. This is what I mixed this pinky one for. Pinky salmon one, because it feels like we've got a bit of that colour. So this is what I was saying, sometimes you might end up with a couple of mid-tone colours in there. That's fine, go for it. You're seeing a couple of tones in there, then get, you know, by all means pop those in. And this is not my lightest. This is just these, it's quite warm, I'd say. And then gets brighter on this edge. So that's what I'm going to do. Just kind of bring it in. A little bit of water. So this is a bit thicker, this paint again. So you're getting a nice coverage. So I'm going to go all the way down this edge here. And then what I'm going to do is just give that a bit of a blend with what we've already got in there. Okay. So that's fine for a first thing. Then we can get some of the other colours in once we start to do it. So I'm just going to look at what's left here. So again, we've got facing nice light window there. What I am going to do though, is I'm going to put that little darker window in. So I'm going to go in with a bit of brown. Or you can purple or anything. Pop that in to place. That window. I might even, you could even put it with a tiny bit of a tint with something slightly lighter if you wanted to, so it's not quite so intense or not. I'm only doing it for that one because we've got a lot of paint to put around it. So I'm going to go in with although it's in the shadow, it's lit, isn't it? So you could even go in with a combination. I'm going to just bring in the lightest and then the medium one here together. So it's not the very brightest, but it's light enough. This is how we start to get the shape. And start to get the shape of some of these. Okay. And then we've got the top. I'm going to just go in with this mid-tone here because it's not the brightest again. It's just mix it in with the colour that we've got in there. Use a few little circular motions, and you can always pop a bit of the colour that you've used at the bottom as well and kind of blend that one in a bit up the top. So we can take different colours and blend them together that we've already used, so there's not obvious kind of patches in there. And then again, I'm looking on here, so we've got this really nice bright bit on the edge there. So we're building up a really good definition of each of these, areas, so it works. And then we've got this one that comes out here as well, haven't we? So I'm like, oh, that's a kind of a mixture. It's lightish. And I'm going to go in with a bit of this sandy colour that I've mixed there. It's just slightly different. And then I'm going to blend in a bit of this other light one, so it's a combination. So each of these tones is doing its own little job with our castle. We can bring that right over the edge if you want to. And I'm going to go in with a bit, because it is light. I'm going to go in with this lightest one, just blend it in a little bit. Just all I'm doing is just wiggling my brush in an artisan style of fashion. So if you've got the desire to kind of wiggle your brush about and make marks, brilliant, go for it. Okay. So it may be you've got some slightly lighter areas on some of these turrets as well, the ones that kind of are catching the light. May do a similar thing, so you can go back and have a little look on there. And then, we can work into these as well. So before I do anything else on there, I might just do something with these turrets actually, otherwise I'm going to look a little bit on floating on their own. Throw in some of these. This is where it's the awkward stage where you think, oh, it's not quite looking, so I'm going to build this up in a moment. So what we need to go in with now is thinking about the really shadowy ones, because we haven't got any really shadowy ones on there. We've just gone for a few midtones. So I'm going to go in with brown. So where I've got some, so here it's quite, it really is quite shady, isn't it, in there? So I'm going in with some burnt umber, which is a darker brown, because it's really, that will help us really make that building move backwards in a really much bigger way. So we're showing the depth between the two. So here, all I'm going to do, I'm actually going to wiggle the brush up out a bit as though it's brickwork. Just kind of sideways here. And then where else I can see it that's really dark on the top of some of these, I'm seeing it. So just keep looking now for where you're seeing those much darker shadows. There's some down here. Again, you'd expect that there because it really is in the shadows of these two really big areas of building there, castle. So this is where it will feel harsh, and then we'll soften it down with some highlights in a moment. So, and this is where we're going to change it from photograph to artisan to being our kind of artistic impression. We're putting our own stamp on it. So I might pop a little window in, for example. Now I'm not making perfect shapes here because I want mine to be a little bit more of a representation than an exact window. I'm kind of making it a little bit nice and loose. I've just kind of dabbed a shape on really there with a little brush and with the point. And then I'm going to do the same on here. So I'm looking here where it's much darker, so that at the top is much more shadowy. So you can break that line up with it as well, so it's not too too harsh. If it feels harsh, you can break it up. If you really like the harder line, then by all means do that. And then I'm thinking about these little windows in here. Again, I'm dabbing on quite thick amounts of paint so it covers nicely. Just another one there. So more often than not, when you look at a lot of these paintings, they're just dabbed on little shapes, don't actually look like a perfect window at all. And then again, I'm looking at the bottom here. So I'm going to go in with this dark colour because we'll be softening it down with mist anyway. So I'm just kind of following the curve I've got in there, which is all kind of underneath. But again, so where would we expect? So we've got some, again, just having a little look at where else you've got some of these darker shapes. Maybe it's just the top of a turret, or like where the brickwork goes in, or extra brickwork is, in the shade. Often between two sections, particularly that what you would expect, wouldn't you? We've got like quite a thin, dark, shadowy line there. And we have to look for these sometimes. You can just see it's quite fine, isn't it? Just between. Because this does jut out a little bit. So I'm actually going to pop a space there. And again, you can just make a broken line. If you don't feel comfortable having a really strong line in there, that's okay. But again, we've got another a very dark window here, which you'd expect because that bit of the castle is sticking out. But then there's some other shadowy bits that I want to just darken a bit here as well. There's a few. I'm not going to go in with a dark brown, really brown line, but I'm going to go in with like a purpley. So I'm just seeing a shadow there, but it's not a really harsh shadow because it's in so much in the light. So we're just literally adding our own stamp onto here. anywhere else. So these are so when we put these shadows in, these are the ones that actually, put one there, look, really create that depth between. Another one there. Yeah, and we can follow this all the way through, but actually, I'm just going to continue on here, putting a little bit more detail in the brickwork there. And now we can then build up this little section so we can almost get a little bit of a finish on that so it really feels like, oh yeah, this is really feeling like a castle now. So I'm going to go in now with some warmer bits, if I see them, or some brights, and then finish off with some brights. I'm actually going to pop in a few of these other colours. You might see yellow, you might see kind of a warmer brown, you might see a bit pink. So, and all I'm doing is working into that all red brushwork, just not like really painstakingly, but just find an area where you see a lot of a similar colour and just drop it in. Just drop it in. So I'm going in with this colour because I'm seeing this kind of warm. And it just, all I'm doing is just putting a little bit on the tip. And just dropping it in, or so it's, and just dragging it a little bit. But you could just make any way you want to have it explored, that brushwork, just have a little go. See what happens. I'm going with this warmer. So this is how we then kind of, we're starting to get a bit of character on there. So that's warmer. Then I'm going to finish off with a highlight. I'm going to go in with the lightest one now and just pick out certain bits on my castle, on this particular area, where I feel like it's really starting to make a difference. Pop to the front there. Just put in the window by accident, never mind. Yeah, so, and then I'll just leave that there for a bit and just move on to the next bit. So we don't want, obviously if we go too much in the detail, it will pull the castle forward. So it's finding that balance between just a bit of detail, just a bit of kind of variation, feeling that it's castle-like without actually painstakingly painting in every tiny block, because obviously that will make it pop forward because it'll be the detail will make it move forwards. So, we can go in and do exactly the same in the other parts. So let's have a look. There's some of the warmy bits in there. I'm going to try and pop some of these slightly lighter ones in there as well. Just in certain areas where you're seeing a pattern, because you can drive yourself a little bit mad inside just because you think, oh, there's some there, there's some there, there's some there. So just find a particular colour and the pattern on it and just follow that down. That's a really helpful way of doing it. And then just stop there with that particular bit and move on to somewhere else. Again here, might be that I actually go in with a bit of white in there because it's so bright in there. I'm just going to go in and just dab a little bit of white just through the top there. In here, I'm like looking, okay, I'm going to add some of this in here. This kind of medium salmony pink one. Just into some of that brickwork there. So we just started putting our own stamp on it really with And then, you know, the end when I'm not seeing too much variation here. We keep that pretty light, maybe just a little tiny bit. And then this one here, it's like actually I'm seeing some purpley, a little bit more shadowy ones in there. But then I'm also seeing a little bit of this bright going through the edge. And then we can start the whole process. So that would be, you know, that's where we get up to with that. A little bit, you know, when you're seeing a little bit of the top or whatever as well. We can only have a little explore with it. Let's see, it might be that you need to go darker in the top. So that's what we're doing, you know, and then we can go through that process and work through each bit of the castle. So we're laying down a shadowy, more shady one, more bright, and that creates the shape. And then we're just adding the brickwork and the shape of the brickwork and the little bits of stone with our technique. So I'm just going to take a pause there and come and see how you're all getting on. So what I'm going to do, so that I can demonstrate the water, because obviously if I carry on here, we've done quite a lot of the detail and things, but I'm going to stop as though my castle ends here and just look at how to look at doing the water, and then maybe pop this mist in as well, so that we can see that. So I'm just getting my brush. So what I'm going to be thinking about here are all the layers we've got. And this is where it comes to water, we've got to think, well, how on earth do I get that? How do I get the softness, to feel the softness of the reflection so it doesn't feel hard, like so it's a good contrast as well to the castle itself. So I'm going to show you some techniques to get the softness here and kind of get it a little bit kind of blended. And also, where do you start with the reflection? Because there's so much going on. Well, so what we would be thinking about is how the water is. So we've been mixing up some blues to go in here. And then we're going to be mixing up some of the shadows and these other colours as well. So, and then the final layer is whatever's right on top. So if anything was going across the water this way, like a ripple or whatever, or anything like, you know, steam or fog or anything like that, that's right on the top. So we got to almost think about, like, we have the water, you know, the reflection is in the water with the water, and then we've got anything over the top. So that's pretty much how it works. But as a general rule of thumb, and this obviously changes depending on the weather conditions, depending on the time of year, but generally what you get is a more muted palette, a smaller palette of colours in the water. And that's because as a general rule of thumb, dark colours are reflected a little bit more lightly in the water, and lighter colours are reflected a little bit more darkly in the water. So we've got a smaller level of contrast in there, whereas out we would have much darker, much lighter. In the water, it's less dark, less bright. Less light, sorry. So it's just a more muted palette in the water. So if we think about it like that, that does help as well. So I'm going to get lots of colours mixed up, and again, you know, just go with it. So I'm going to take some blues, and again, you can decide which blues. I want to make my blues just slightly darker than the one I've got there, but I'm going to mix up plenty. I'm going to have all that ready as well underneath, waiting to go. A little bit more darker in there. And then I'm going to mix up. So I'm going to go in with a slightly more reddy brown colour, because this lighter one is slightly darker in there. So I've mixed up some earlier, obviously that's dried now. A bit of this bring this over so you can see it. So I've got some blue there. Now, as long as this doesn't come up, it's fine. Sometimes it can come up a little bit off your paper. So just if it starts happening, then move. So I want a little bit of white in there. And I'm going to go in with a bit of yellow as well, so it's more peachy. And a bit more white again. I need plenty of it. And then I'm also going to have a bit of these dark colours, you know, where you've got these. A bit darker down there. I'm going to add a tiny bit of red to that, so it's a bit more pinky. Add more white. It's a bit darker salmon-y colour than that one was before. That's what I'm aiming for. There we go. And then a darker one. So I want some of the brown, the ultramarine brown. Here, but I'm going to make that slightly lighter with some of this salmon-y colour I've just mixed. Well, I've got three colours. I'm going to start with those. Got my blue, slightly dark, slightly not quite as dark brown, the darker shadow, and then this more salmon-y one. So I'm just going to add some water to that before I go in. And I'm going to use my flat brush for this and kind of think about the colours that I put on. So I just need some water to sprinkle on there. I'm just going to drop in that on with the corner of my flat brush at the moment. And then I'm going to start to think about getting this water on here, whereabouts it should go. Now, if you look in this particular one, that because it's so still and because it's of the way the photograph's being taken, it's coming pretty much directly down, which is helpful. So that's why I'm using a flat brush, because what I can do is just start to kind of build in a little bit where I think the blue's going to go around it here. And I've got this on quite thickly again. So I'm just kind of making some shapes whereabouts I think, because these two will meet, because it's nice and thick, and we can actually blend this quite nicely. So I'm bringing in just some of this water around here. And obviously I'll have to make this up a little bit because I've not done the actual castle, but I'm bringing the water around it now. Okay. So we end up, you can see these little stretched bits of the castle here, and it's nice and soft. So because whilst this is still wet, I am going to just kind of dry that off a little bit, wash it off a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with the dark shadowy ones first. So these obviously aren't quite as dark as the rest, but again, we still get a reflection of where those darker darker walls, etc. are. So we can do that. So I'm bringing those in, and I am actually just dragging them just slightly over the edge of that blue. I'm not mixing because it will go a funny colour, but I'm just slightly dragging it over. And then we've got some darker ones in there. I'm working out how far up I need to come with them. Pretty much up to the top. Now, if you need to darken off any areas a bit more, where it's very shady, for example, then just do that. So we'll start to make we'll start to build that picture of it soon. So I'm just going to bring it up to here. Again, I'm just bringing it slightly over, pulling it slightly over. So we're going to get that nice softness in the water here. Feels dark at the top of the turrets here and here. Nice and thick. That's why I can go over the blue without it causing too many problems, but just gently soft over. And then I'm going to then go in with this other salmony colour that I've mixed. I might have a bit of that brown in it as well. So it's not quite, again, it's just soft, but not too much. Nice and muted. I do want to just squash together the ends of my flat brush. Blending it, just blending it all kind of together. Now at the moment, obviously the shape's going a little bit, but we'll put a few things back into that water just so we get the shape. But you'll see, you know, there are just, it's just kind of stretched some colours over the top of another one coming through. Maybe there's a bit of a brighter pop there. You can just pop those little slightly brighter pops in. And here, look. There's a particularly bright one, pop that in. But again, we're just softening it down. Get in there. And then I'm just going to go in with this little brush. I'm just going to pop a bit of definition, just a small amount between. So I will go in with a slightly darker brown for this, and just try and pop in. So that's a bit harsh at the moment, this one, but it's just really tight, just to get a little bit of the shape of the edges of the castle back in the water. Just a small amount, and then I am going to soften those harder lines down. That's just so we can see where each of them are. I want to kind of pull some of those lines down here as well. Now you can make that a little bit more, you know, you can also pop a few, use some of those soft colours just to pop a few of the edges of the turrets back in as well if you want to do that, so you can actually see that there's some more definite shapes in there. So it's starting to be, you know, it's starting to be soft. So again, we want where the windows are, we need a few of those reflections, but again, there'll be, everything feels a bit stretched is what I'd say. Doesn't need to be as dark as what we've got. The thing is, we can pop a few of these marks that are really soft in here, and the eye and brain work out that that's the reflection in the water. It just knows there's a few dark ones in between these turrets, but again, these turrets are not as obvious over this side. So it just popping a few little angles in the water and keeping it nice and soft, or a few brights. I'm going to pop some of that back in there as well. Just a bit where you get a particularly bright one. Okay. And it might be you've got a lightish area as well that you just want to pop in. But again, you can soften that down with another colour. So we're keeping it all soft and blendy in the water, and it's what we're doing in a moment to the top area of that will make a difference. So with the water then, I did say I'd show you with a brush how to get this lovely misty effect here. So take my flat brush here now. I'm just going to add a couple of little lighter areas in the water, just so I get a sense that, you know, there is a bit of a slight difference in tone. So I'm just kind of like, it should be fairly damp. I'm just popping a few little bits in there, especially because over this side it's quite, you know, it's where it's quite lit. I'm just getting a little bit more lightness in there. I'm just moving it in a circular motion, to be fair. And that's a bit light in there. Bring it up again through the tops. Don't be frightened of doing that. It's a bit darker over here. So now, obviously, we have got this lovely mist kind of popping down onto it here and a little bit over the top there. That's the extra element that makes it feel very watery. So what we can do is take this little mop brush. Some people call it a dome brush. It's just used a little bit differently. We can use it a little bit differently with acrylics to how we would use it in watercolor. We tend to put big washes on, whereas we want to keep this like softness. We can also use our fingers, so I'll show you both ways. So what we want with the mist is a nice, quite translucent. So the thing with acrylic paint is it's very opaque, which is the beauty of it, why we can paint things over the top, but we can also use it really thinly to create these lovely mists. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting a little bit of white. Now you could put a tint over, but I'm going in with white just because I know I tried this earlier and actually I needed it a bit brighter. So I'm just going to drop in much more water than I've been using. So not so it's as thin as a watercolour, but much thinner, much thinner than we normally apply acrylics. So you can almost basically create a base that you can see through. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to very lightly, not soak my brush in it, but just pop a tiny little bit. See, it's sitting on the surface. That's like it sits there, just a very small amount on just to kind of help it along. And then I can just pop it. I'm going to pop some, because this is a small painting, I'm just going to pop a little bit of this over the top of here. Now it's quite thick at the moment. I'm going to just use the fan brush to just dab, and you can see it starts to create, it needs to be dry underneath, that's the biggest thing. It starts to create this lovely, more translucent mist because we're moving the paint around with the mop brush. So you get this lovely, start to get this lovely fog effect or mist effect. Makes it really mysterious because we can see through it. It's translucent. Now, if it goes too thin, you can just apply extra layers of it. So I'm adding the paint, and then I'm moving the paint around with this. You can add a little bit of paint to the brush. Sometimes it can get a little bit waterlogged, and then it'll stop behaving like a dome. But again, it's a learning curve. So how much to put on, how thinly to, how much water. Again, it's just trial and error. Just thin it out nicely. And again, you know, what you can do is you can start to build it. So if I want a bit more fog down here, for example, I'll just move a bit down here as well. The key is getting in whilst it's nice and damp. And what you should be able to see then is, should be able to see through it a little bit. And then if you want to add a bit more of a dense area of it, so, you know, because sometimes you do get more fog in one place, just add a little bit more over the top. And that's how we do it. We're just kind of moving it around. And then we get, this starts to really feel like, you know, I'm going to move a little bit further down here as well. I can move it across the page as well, you know, side to side. It feels like, you know, like as water does, it goes over. And just build it up like that. You know, you can even put it over some of the blue that you've done and have a little foggy area, or over this area of a little bit of a foliage there. So that's how we build up this really fantastic like fog area. Now with your finger, you just literally dip it in, and then you can move it around. Let me find a little area where I put it. Let's put it a little bit more over here. So I'll put a little bit down on the paper, dry my finger off, and then I can use that to just tap it. Just tap it all around. You can do this for clouds as well. I'm just building it up. I've put in this. If there's not enough, I can just add a little bit more and just kind of move it around. And again, it's just trial and error how much to put on your finger. But it's because it's more translucent that we can get that. So that's that. And then if we wanted to add the foliage over the top, you can just go in with a nice round brush, you know, like this. And then just, you know, I've got a bit of very dark green here. I think that one's Hocus green. And then a little bit of burnt umber. And then, you know, then start to go in, bring in these lovely, you know, some of the areas here of this foliage coming over. This one's a bit more difficult. That one's easy because we can see the actual branches. Where you can't see the branches, you just kind of have to just pop something down that's solid underneath, just to kind of guessing where it's going. And I hold my brush further down when I'm doing this. I know that looks terrible at the moment, but it'll be fine in a moment. And just kind of like just flick these out. And then because what you can do then is build up the foliage around them coming over. So make it really dark. And then I'm just dotting it. So that's all we do when we're looking at something coming over the top, is you can just literally, I mean, it's very shadowy as well. So if you can't get it dark enough with the blue and the green, just add in some, sorry, with the green and the brown, just add in some blue too. It's really shadowy, really dark in that area. And then we just dotting. And then that again is just a little technique that you can just try out until you're happy that you're kind of getting a foliage look, you know, either side, follow either side of the branch as well. Some might build up in a bit more. These bits actually are always, I think, once you get moving with a style that you're happy with, are actually quite fast because you get into a flow with these very, very quickly. I'll just show you this before we finish. Well, yeah, it's very enjoyable, and you know, you can make that go anywhere. So you don't even have to stick with what you can see on there. You can bring it right across or just a little bit, bring it up, down. But it's really nice to do. Make it thicker. Yeah. And just kind of build it up that way, you know, make some thinner ones. And yeah, so it's just like follow the way your hand wants to go. And that's something that takes a bit of practice, like the foliage. But again, you can always do that. If you're not comfortable of like doing it with the first mark, you can have a little go, for example, doing it on a bit of separate paper first. I'm just going to pop off this just so we can get a little bit more of an idea. Oops, Daisy, I just pulled that bit off. First. Have to do it slower, Becky. And it just helps us, you know, create a very small border sometimes, so that we can see kind of how everything builds up. But obviously, yeah, you know, this is just a little study. We don't always have to finish. Sometimes we just want to have a little go at some of it, and then we've learned a little bit more. I'm just going to pop a little bit back in the water here where I've just stripped that off. Might just be able to. There we go. So yeah, so I hope that's been really helpful. And again, the mist is something like even here now it's dry, I can see. I'd probably like to go in a little bit more thickly, for example, in some of the areas nearer to the castle. So go that way, just to build that up a little bit more. And you don't know that till it's dry. Sometimes it takes till it dries to work it out. So yeah, really good one now. I hope that we'll take a final pause there. I hope that's been really helpful for you and you've enjoyed a bit of castle and moats.